fundamental belief that the more that you all understand what we're doing, the more you're able to hold your employees accountable, us. And I know that that's not typically something that occurs in government. In fact, I get a little cynical, and I think sometimes it's not communicated much in government because then people keep their seats if no one knows what they're doing. But I do not believe that's what government should be. It's not the kind of government we deliver for our neighbors. So, we're going to present, first it'll be a little 101 as to how this stuff works. Hey, they got the agenda up. So first we'll start with our City Government 101. Then we'll talk into our policy priorities, which are broken into 4 buckets. Accountable city budget and services, reimagining public safety, creating a more livable city, and protecting our rights. And then we'll give you opportunities to stay informed. We are then also going to have a breakout session based on those different buckets. So the reason we have these up here is as you're thinking about the things that are most important to you, or that you want to learn about, or that you want to be a part of engaging in, we're going to have the breakouts into those 4 buckets. Accountable city budget and services, reimagining public safety, creating a more livable city, and protecting our rights. So, on to the next slide, my friends. So first and foremost, and how we start almost every meeting we do, is a constant reminder, and in this time and moment, especially when you're looking at the federal level, a reminder that is crucial to every single one here, every single person. This government is yours. I want you to say that. Can you say this government is mine? This government is mine. You guys are listening to big government because I just told you guys to say that. But anyway, kidding. But it is because you guys own it, right? And I think sometimes whatever ideology you have, whatever party you may think you're part of, this is still fundamentally your government, you own it. The people you elect are your employees. And I'm going to keep drilling that home time and time and time again, especially in this moment, it's important to know that. Whether it's a scam artist in the White House or any other challenge you got, you own it. And you guys are the bosses. Not in Chicago where everyone else is viewed as the boss. I'm going to keep reinforcing that. We're going to make t-shirts. Next slide, please. We want accessible, transparent, accountable, responsible, and independent government. The acronym's ATARI for those of you who haven't figured that out yet. Accessible, transparent, accountable, responsive, independent. That's what we do. All right, so city government. See that nice thing up there? That is what your city government is. That's how it's broken down. Yes, we will actually have all of this available online, all of it. So that way you guys can take it and on tour and teach your family and all the things. We want you to have it. So, let me see something real quick, because I might have an issue. Let me see. Chicago residents. We got that one right. Thank you so much, Murph. At the top, Chicago residents. You guys, the bosses, right? Then you got below everyone else that works for you guys. City council, mayor, city clerk, treasurer. You've got your council committees and the office of the mayor. That's partly your executive branch, but your city council is actually your legislative. Then underneath that, you've got your departments, which are broken up into sections. You've got your finance and administration, which has budget, technology, finance, administrative hearings. There's a whole bunch there. You've got your legislative and election, which is largely your board of elections. You've got city development, so the Department of Planning and Development, Cultural Affairs, Department of Housing, those all go there. Community Services, Department of Public Health, Commission on Human Relations, Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, shout out to the back, MOPD's in the house. Department of Family and Support Services in the libraries. Public Safety, Police Board, the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, the Police Department, OEMC, or the Office of Management, Emergency Management and Communications, your Fire Department, your Office of Public Safety Administration. They deal with benefits and administrative assets related to both CPD, CFD, and on OEMC as well. And then you've got your Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability, or your district councilors. We have a district councilor in the house, Deirdre O'Connor, 20th District. Shout out to our elected official in the house. Hey, look at that, respect on the names right here. Next, you've got regulatory. Your Office of Inspector General, Department of Buildings, Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, Chicago Animal Care and Control, License Appeal Commission, Board of Ethics, and Department of the Environment. Then you've got infrastructure, streets and sand, right? Everyone's favorite Department of Transportation, especially during our construction season this year. Isn't it great? Department of Water Management and Department of Aviation. So those are roughly, it's like close to 30, actually it's a little bit more than 30 departments. The reason why it's important to know that, Your budget pays for all of those things. So when we talk about the budget, looking at how much is paid in each of those departments is important on top of pensions, payments, and everything else. But that's largely how you work. You've got your mayor, city council, your executive departments, city clerk, and treasurer. Next slide. This, wait, go back one real quick. Come on, let's try.
This is the right one.
There you go. See? So you've got your city council committees. That's separate from your departments, right? So if you're a city council member like myself, you serve on a number of committees. So you've got a whole bunch. I'm not going to read them all because there's a whole bunch. It's, what is it, 20? About 20 of them, okay? Let's take it all in, see if you got your favorites. There might be a bingo game after. Next up is the ones that I serve on. If it's blue, I'm on it. If it's yellow, I am the chair or the vice chair of it. So in total, I got 8 out of the 20. Also separate from there, not on there, also on the subcommittee for revenue under finance. So I am on the budget committee, I'm on finance, I'm on the rules committee, as are all members of city council. I'm also on ethics and government oversight, public safety and workforce development, and I am the vice chair of transportation and the public way, and the chair of the committee on immigrant and refugee rights. So when we're not doing potholes, tree trims, duct taping your signs, or whatever you might have seen me doing, this is also the other work that we do, and that's why we want to focus on that during the policy and legislative. Next slide. How legislation works, or how a bill becomes a law. Please don't sing Schoolhouse Rock right now. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to be here so you guys can see it. So top ones, you introduce legislation. Anybody can write legislation. By anybody, I mean anybody. You actually, neighbors can put together legislation to then have people introduce. But then we have a whole lot more work. It's not as hard as one would think. In fact, a little schmuck like me can do it. So we introduce legislation. That happens typically at a city council meeting. Now, when it's introduced, 2 things that can occur. What will typically happen is the city clerk will read the title of the piece of legislation, and then it could safely go to its next committee. You also introduce a committee. So for example, if we were writing legislation to stop a mayor from evicting people at 60 days after they're at a shelter, we would introduce it into the committee of immigrant and refugee rights. If it were to make it there, then you can hear it in that hearing. But the other thing that could occur is it could get referred to rules. So that would occur if any city council member disagreed with the committee you're proposing. So let's say, for example, I have something based on police accountability, and I decided to put it in public safety. And another alderman said, no, that should go in police and fire. The fact that there's a conflict would automatically send it over to rules. And rules is typically where they say bills go to die. Yeah. However, if it's been sitting in a committee, including the rules committee, for more than 60 days, you can do what's called a Rule 41, which forces the city council to vote on it. But it makes it harder if you haven't had a hearing to talk about it, right? So, you can get referred to committee or you can get referred to rules, right? Rules, you already know that's where it goes. Well, let's say it's referred to committee. Now you have your hearing. You can have a subject matter hearing or a vote hearing. And there, the members of that committee can vote on whether they recommend it going forward to the city council vote, or it should be held in committee because they need to deliberate, you don't have enough votes to pass it through. So that's another reason the legislation could stop. Now, if you're going the ideal way, you've introduced it, it gets referred to committee, you have a hearing, it gets recommended, it then comes to city council. And at city council, the whole council will vote on it. So typically when you're working on legislation, there's a couple of junctures that you want to look at. For example, when I introduce legislation, I want to get as many co-sponsors signed on, so it looks like there's a lot of support. It makes it easier to go forward. I try to get between 30 and 40 signatures. Or you might want to just introduce something to talk about later, and maybe you'll go through all that. But then when it's coming up for the committee, you want to know out of how many people in the committee, let's say it's 14, that you've got 7+ on board to make sure it passes. Then once it passes there, you still got to get to 26 or more to get to the full city council vote, or potentially, depending on how contentious the subject matter might be, 34 votes to avoid a mayoral veto. So that's largely how a bill becomes a law. There's a whole lot in between that. There's people that advocate for these things, that reach out. You hear from neighbors about different legislation. All of that's important because, for example, I weigh what I hear from you all about the different legislation. There is a website, the city clerk website, that has all this information on different legislation, so you can always just peruse as one may. It's actually pretty informative rather than just relying on a headline, because sometimes you won't find out about something until it's already passed. And so just something to provide for context. Next. Oh, the only other thing is, in between terms, it all resets. So if you introduce something and it's sitting there, once you get into a new term, it all goes back to square one. You have to reintroduce it and start back fresh. The first piece of legislation that happens after an election is like the clean slate. So, all right, let's go into our priorities. As I stated, but I'll kind of go into a little more detail, and I think I might cite examples of where we've done stuff like this. So, accountable city government, creating a more responsible and transparent city budget. As you all know, we talk about the budget a lot. We try to get the data to make sure we're not just bloviating and talking about the politics of it. We want you to understand the numbers, because the decisions are very difficult. And I am of the belief that unless you know the numbers, you can get sold. And so that is why it's always been a focus for us, but also improving city services. One example, and some of y'all may feel differently, but I have numbers to back it up, are the 311 tree trims. That's right. So prior to us making the change, tree trims were put in as a request. You have to wait 2 to 3 years to see if maybe your tree got trimmed if you put in a request. Once we found out that the challenge was that there wasn't enough capacity to do a better system, we negotiated in a budget, I think it's 2020, to actually double the amount of headcount that the tree trim crews had and go to a grid system. So now every single tree gets done. Now the grid's taking a while because you're doing every single tree, not just the ones that get requested. But ideally, when the system moves forward and it's like fully fleshed out, every tree in the city of Chicago gets trimmed every 5 years. And so that way, the only time right now if you submit a request that it is received is if it's a tree emergency, meaning the branch is big, you see a fracture, they address that. So when sometimes people are like, hey, this tree branch is hitting my house, what the heck's going on? There's a grid system that because of its adoption, I think it's like 180% more trees get trimmed every year. So it may not always feel that it's doing more, but we got the data. It's actually, it'll get there. So just want to flag that as ways we improve city services. 311, we've gotten information to be able to let you guys know more realistic expectation time for completion rather than sitting there floating. So these are things that we do to make sure we're improving government so you actually see the return on your investment for the taxes you're paying. Reimagining public safety. When we think public safety, typically everyone always thinks cops and fire. That is not the only thing that's public safety, and if you ask anybody who tries to cross the street in the city of Chicago where people don't respect driving or intersections or stop signs, there's other things related to safety that we say encompass all of it. But as it relates to CPD, which is obviously what's top of mind for most folks, it's making sure that we have a system that's accountable and that's fair. Because when it comes to your tax dollars, the largest expenditures that you all get your taxes raised for are police overtime, police misconduct settlements, right? And unless we improve those two things, that budget keeps getting more and more expensive. So it's important for us, not just from a justice lens, but just from a responsible lens to make sure the government's also executing well that way. But it's also freeing up officers, so they're doing things, so overtime again. I don't think we need officers doing parking tickets or event security when you can have the event organizers pay for security, right? Or public or mental health issues, substance use disorder, homelessness, right? The cost you're paying for CPD to address that as opposed to different departments leads to more overtime and way more cost. And so we like to make sure that we talk through that so people understand how to get the most effective police force you can get rather than when it's spread too thin that people get burned out and they leave. Next, decreasing traffic safety deaths through infrastructure and other policies. You know, favorites like the speed limit cameras. Right? No? Okay, next. Just slow down and you won't get a ticket. I know I've gotten enough of them myself. Okay. Creating a more livable city, right? We all know that your taxes keep getting higher, and the rate at which they get higher is getting faster. Or you might skip a couple years where you're not paying a property tax, and you're making up for it a year after, a couple years after. So we think having a lot of different things related to how to level that makes sense. We think that in order to create more affordable housing, we need a number of tools, some which are legislative, others which are allowing more density to build. Because if you've got more supply, then the cost doesn't get as high. Right, so you want to make sure that you have enough supply for it to also level up, as well as investing in safe streets and world-class transit. Anybody who's riding CTA knows we need improvements there. So we want to make sure we focus on where we can affect change, pursuing more environmental justice. So we want the city we live in to continue to get better for the folks that are going to continue living in it, right? So that's a focus as well. And protecting our rights, which in this moment feels like number one for a whole bunch of folks because of the times we're in. So whether we're talking our undocumented neighbors, workers not getting their rights, our LGBTQ family, our women and other folks seeking reproductive health, that we're doing everything possible in the city to make sure people feel like they live in the same city and are part of our same community. So these things are really the bigger buckets that we focus on. The two things I'm going to mention that I had forgotten to mention, actually three. There are three parts of city that are not city government that get conflated as part of city government, so I want to clarify that for you. The Park District is not part of the city of Chicago, it is actually a separate agency. So it's its own body of government. Similarly, CPS is not your city budget, it is a separate level of government. CHA is also not, and CTA isn't. So although they're all symbiotic in relationship, they are separate governments, separate budgets, things that I want to flag, because I'm sure we'll have CPS questions later, so make sure you flag that out. Next slide. Did that skip a slide or no? Just checking.
It's just the same one, but prettier.
Yeah, so this is just a picture of the same priorities we discussed. Now we also ask our neighbors what the priorities are. Right, so we had a survey usually before budget where we're asking folks what their priorities are. It helps inform as we're walking into negotiations. And so the top three priorities based on 40th Ward neighbors filling out surveys and letting us know are public safety, housing, and infrastructure, which line up with a lot of things that are priorities. So thank you for that. We'll continue asking folks to make sure. It's part of what we're doing the breakout here as well. Next. Accountable city budget and services. First bucket. Again, like I stated before, how many of y'all know how the city budget works? You know, stuff you hang out with, you read, check on your phone every time. I think largely you don't. And no disrespect to people. We're trying to inform people more. But mostly, the time the budget ever comes up is at the end of the year when the votes happen. And one would imagine with a city as large as Chicago and all the departments I mentioned, when they introduce a budget in October to get voted on before the end of the year, you're not going to get the most information. So what we've done is really pushed to make sure we have a different process. In 2020, under Mayor Lightfoot, I negotiated to have a working group all year round, but then Ms. Lightfoot did not follow through on her end of the deal. So we never had a working group all year round to discuss this budget. Sometimes I get a little mad about it, but it's okay. Keep moving. But we continue that conversation. In 2020, our office, this guy and our team and about 20 interns actually drafted our own city budget, which was the first time introduced by the city council in decades. So what we did, just for background, is we looked at PDFs, because they don't give you guys files as far as the city, had interns take those PDFs and create Excel sheets. Take those Excel sheets, put them into a customer resource management tool, CRM for those who know that stuff, and then worked on a budget based on a prior budget. I tend to do a little bit extra as our team, but we think it's worth it. What we learned there is that nobody else understands how budgets work that way. Like, alders are not used to it. Alders are used to the old school model of, hey, yes or no, what gets you to yes. I don't think it serves the public well, especially when we have the deficits that we do every single year. So what we negotiated last year during the budget was, rather than a working group, moving the budget process earlier. So what we did is we got them to mandate certainly quarterly reportings from the budget office, but also from the Council Office of Financial Accountability. So it's almost like the closest you get to an independent budget office in the city. So you have two different bodies giving us quarterly reports, and then in the middle of the year, July 30th, they give us basically a mid-year report. So for example, you vote on a budget that says you're going to make this much revenue, you're going to tighten up this much. In the middle of the next year, we want to find out that actually happened. Because there are times where it doesn't, and you keep trying to fix it. We want to know middle of the year. The other thing that happens is in October, when a budget is presented, we then have hearings to hear about the budget. We ask questions through the chair, right, saying, hey, can you guys send us the data? There are plenty of times now, and I've only been here 6 years, where we never got that information until after a budget vote. Not exactly the best way to solve a budget. So by having all this moved up sooner, we can ask those questions sooner, expect the answers sooner, and then be more informed when it comes to actually having the vote occur. So we've done that. We've added more headcount to the Office of Financial Oversight or Analysis. So all those things we're doing are to continue making the process better and have more information for all of you all. So when we're talking about how we land these difficult decisions, it's not just, hey, do I trust my alderman? It's show me the numbers. I need to see your homework. I need to make sure our electorate understands that better. Fair? Cool. Next slide. I think I kind of explained that. So we did that legislation. Now we're going to actually have the hearing. So starting in September, we're having our first mid-year budget hearings. I know what you're saying. September's not mid-year. But it's the closest the city council apparently gets. Yeah, even though we got it July 30th, August is when alders typically don't meet at City Hall. We're in the wards. So September's when we come back in and we're going to have that information. The other thing we want to work on is police settlement transparency. So right now there is no tracking as it relates to the settlement misconduct payments. We appropriated $82 million for this year. We're already at $140 million worth of spend.
289 million.
Huh?
289 million.
We're at 299 now? Sorry, 300. Sold. So we're at 300 million. And the thing that we don't have is any tracking. So you don't have any trends related to what are the things we're paying for the most. What are the behaviors that are leading to these misconduct settlements? How do we curb those behaviors? Are we seeing any trends with some individuals who are having more settlements? None of that data is tracked at all. And typically if you talk about this stuff, some neighbors are like, you must hate the police. This has little to do with the police. It has everything to do with people who shouldn't be policed in the first place. And so by having that kind of information, you're able to have a more effective department. Next. Accountable city government. Oh yeah, I did do that. Sorry. Sorry. CTA had a president by the name of Dorval Carter, who did a great job with infrastructure and acquiring funding. But when it came to the customer service part of the job, not much. When it came to reliability on time, people waiting 45 minutes for a bus, he didn't even want to come to city council to talk to us about it. That led to me, this guy in our team, drafting legislation that we tried to pass through Lightfoot. She blocked it. And then when Johnson came in, we passed it. That requires them to come speak to us quarterly about everything they've got going on. The reason we want that is like any environment where someone has any level of accountability. Quarterly reports make sense. You're able to identify a baseline of activity. And if you're improving quarter over quarter, that's a bare minimum expectation of people. Some of y'all may not know, but I worked corporate before I got elected. So you kind of do this stuff and it helps you get better. So we passed legislation to require Dorval Carter to show up. I think within a year he quit. Resign, not quit. Whatever, yeah. So things like that are about accountability. It is never our job to get rid of people. It's for people to get better. And we didn't technically get rid of him. He resigned. He did it himself. So whatever. So we also did it for CPS now. So we passed that about 2 months ago, 3 months ago. Then now CPS will be required to come before the council quarterly. Wish we would have done it sooner because we're looking at what's happening right now. But it allows for a different level of accountability. So whereas your school board meetings are typically somewhat opaque, the decisions might be in closed quarters and they come out and vote. Having them come and testify before the council allows us to ask more questions to figure out what's going on. We can get into CPS later. I promise. I think we will. Okay. And then same thing. We passed legislation to improve services. Right now we're looking at disability parking and how sometimes it takes forever to establish it because if they see a garage, all of a sudden it gets denied and you got to appeal and it takes a year or two to get that. Or on the other side of the equation, if someone's no longer there, it takes forever to remove it and how you have accountability as well. So we're looking to just improve, again, services because if you're going to get taxed for it, if you're going to continue to get taxed for it, spoiler alert, you will, then the services should get better as well, so you feel better about it. So that's our commitment. And then we meet with the departments regularly to kind of continue. Like we met with the Department of Finance when we were working on curbstoning legislation, meaning people who were selling cars on the street, where those cars should have gotten towed, but they weren't. So we worked to improve that system to help empower CPD and the Department of Finance to better address it and help eliminate those cars that people were selling and were taking up spots from our neighbors. So next. Hey, look at me. That was stuff I mentioned. 311 modernization and the tree trims. You guys heard that in the intro. We did that. Disabled parking. That's what we're working on. Next slide. It's almost like I know what's on the slides. All right. So next, reimagining public safety. All right. So yes, the curbstoning that I mentioned. Literally what we've done. I'm so speed running for you guys. All right. But now what we're also looking at is alternative response systems when it comes to ticketing. So right now there are, CPD gets called for ticketing left and right. There's a cost for that. It adds to the overtime, where you have a whole Department of Finance, where they cost you less and actually generate revenue in those roles, where there's actually cost neutral or cost benefit by having them do it. But trying to transition from one to the other is a whole system and bureaucracy you got to talk through. So I want to shout out the 19th district counselors. They are the ones who started this work, and they brought in some alders to help sponsor and pass this forward. Because what we're looking to do is, again, offset that, so you have different people doing that work, and that way officers can focus on their core functions, which I think are investigations, apprehension, emergency response when appropriate. Right? If they focus just on that, that gets a lot better if everyone else is taking other things off their plate, and this is part of that. Next. So, oh yeah. Police accountability. You guys saw I mentioned the Civilian Commission for Public Safety and Accountability, right? Got that right? Community. Not civilians, community. I sounded like an officer when I said civilians, my apologies. Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability. It is the strongest accountability governing body in the country. I was part of drafting it and getting it passed. This occurred in the last term. After that, we had a subsequent election where 60 members were elected, and there is now a commission that works on this stuff. So whether it's pretextual stops or following up, they also get to determine who might be the COPA chief. They weigh in on superintendent. So all these things are bodies that allow you to have more accountability rather than one guy making a decision of who they think is a good friend and putting into a place. So we're really proud about that. Obviously, it needs to continue growing and improving. Again, the tracking related to the police misconduct cases, those are things that we're focusing on now as part of our work. We've also had to hone in. So although this might feel like a lot, and our policy chief and folks here will speak to it, we were actually working on triple this and then had to bring it down. So these are the things we're focusing on now. Next. The other imagining public safety, or reimagining I should say, is the Smart Streets pilot. This is where all the cars that are blocking the existing bike lanes lead to accidents. And accidents, probably not the right word, crashes, injuries, people getting hurt, kids getting killed. So that led to us increasing the penalty for blocking a bike lane, but also in pushing on that, it led to a model where now it's a pilot where there's cameras on CTA buses or other cars that if you're blocking the bike lane, you'll just take the picture and give you the ticket, right? So again, it's for accountability. It's not a tax. It's not a tax. It's not a tax. Taxes are things you get as part of the social contract. Tickets are what happen when you violate the law. Okay? Okay. We all do it, so we can admit it. Just want to make sure. Because everyone's like trying to nickel and dime us. You know what? Slow down. Don't block the bike lane. You're not getting nickel or dime. All right. So next, it is looking at expanding that. That's what we're working on as well. You can go to the next slide. This slide. The other thing, we called for a hearing on CPD handling of protection orders and cyber stalking. Shocker for some of the people in the crowd here. When women have issues, public safety doesn't always take it seriously. When there's orders of protection, the court system doesn't always take it seriously. So as we see those examples of women not being heard, we sometimes have to change legislation and call for hearings. So we have done some of that work. We've also affected the court system. We actually got a judge effectively removed from working domestic violence cases and in a traffic court. Now you can clap for that. That's right. I want to shout out our team for putting in a lot of work. Our chief of staff, working at the county helped out a lot as well. All right. We also established a working group to improve the city's extreme weather response, because whether it's extremely hot or extremely cold, the city's not giving you proper information as to where you can go. We know that because they will send people to park field houses, but the park staff don't even know that it is an actual extreme weather place and shelter you can go to. So we're trying to get all those things improved. In order to do so, you need to create a kind of working group for the people that do this work, as well as those most impacted, to get those improvements happening. So we have started that work. I think currently we established it, and Alderwoman Maria Hatton has been kind of taking the lead on it from there, because again, we're doing triple the amount of work and we're going to scale down a little bit. Next. I really like this one, guys. And it'll come up twice in the slide coming up next, I think, is we are establishing the city's first stabilization housing project, the Haven on Lincoln. Used to be the Diplomat Motel. How many of y'all know about it? Hand up, yeah, great. How many of y'all don't? Put a hand up. Okay, yeah, we're learning something. So, during COVID, in order to address the fact that there were so many homeless folks who also were in fear for their lives during the global pandemic, the city rented out a hotel, Hotel 66, I believe is the name, downtown, where each person got their own unit, and they got support systems for mental health services, substance use disorder services, right? What they found through that pilot was that you got better outcomes. Shocker, spoiler alert. You provide those support systems for people in a stable place to live, they get better. And they get healthier, and they stabilize and find places to live on their own. And so as a result of all that information, the city, through some grants, started looking at motels, and we were like raising our hand, sign us up, because we got a whole bunch of these motels over on Lincoln, and there's opportunities to do something better. So the Diplomat Motel has been acquired. It's currently going under rehab, and it's going to be managed by Cornerstone, which does a lot of services for the unhoused in Uptown and other places as well, in Rogers Park. So this is going to be that model. The person gets their own unit, the dignity of support systems, to take her from one end to the other. And my hope and goal, because we added a community referral program, is that each ward, if this works out well, multiplies out and has their own. Because as we all know, if you're driving around Lakeshore or anywhere else, is that the number of unhoused folks is increasing. And the only way you solve it is by creating housing. And there is no profit margin in creating housing for the unhoused. So that's where government's in, and we think this model can work. We're going to continue to do updates once it's actually got folks moving in there. We want to make sure people know about the outcomes. I know I'm going to cry day one. I promise you I'm going to cry day one when you see folks actually going to their place for the first time. I can't wait. All right. And then we also have a resolution we introduced, speaking out against the rise in anti-Semitism, which we know is happening. Absolutely. We think that the way things have been happening in City Council has sometimes gotten pretty contentious when there's an actual opportunity to come together. Because no matter where you are, who you are, where you're from, you deserve to have a safe home. And there's a lot that strays away from that. And if we're not modeling that kind of behavior here, it is hard to imagine it'll happen globally. So we want to make sure we're speaking to everyone who feels like they're unsafe. And so that's why we introduced that as well. Next. Creating a more livable city. Bam, look at that, second slide, same thing like I told you guys. So, what we've done, I think it's like first year in office, we doubled the affordable requirements ordinance. So if you have a property as a new development, if it's 10 units or more, before we showed up, one of those units had to be affordable. Now we doubled it to 20%. It's still not enough, like the return on that's pretty marginal, but it is something legislatively that adds to it, and we are looking at other ways to improve. We also upzoned, but we'll show that later, part of our Western, all of Western got upzoned, so that we don't have to have a community zoning meeting every single time and never have any growth. So we're proactively looking at planning that way. And then eliminating parking minimums to allow for more units. So if you're by buses, trains, the cities move forward with eliminating those parking minimums. I think either way we have the zoning processes to try to figure out what a balance looks like. But the reality is when parking's taking up so much of this build in the construction, it's less units, and that means higher cost per unit because the person building it needs to see their return. And so trying to figure out a better balance means you gotta be a little more malleable with the legislation. And then we mentioned the first stabilization housing that I just talked about, the Haven on Lincoln, but we also here in the 40th Ward are part of the ADU pilot. How many people don't know what ADU means? Is great. Additional dwelling units. Your granny flats, coach houses, basement units, those are illegal in the city of Chicago. In the 40th Ward, we're part of a pilot where they are legal, and so we're incentivizing more growth. The city is looking to do it citywide, right? It's a way to grow soft density. So instead of having a Sears Tower in the middle of your block, maybe somebody's got an extra unit for like their parents, or the kids who came back from college, or somebody you're renting to just to be able to help pay your mortgage, pay your taxes, right? So that's something else that we're working on citywide to get passed. Next. Public transit and transportation. We fired Dorval Carter, the CTA president. That's bullet point number 1, it's written differently. Yo, for real? All right. We're just gonna keep saying that every time, I guess. I'm not, I'm gonna be nice. Oh, by the way, for those people that think I'm being mean, the next job he got pays him more, so he's doing fine. He went from 380,000 to 500,000. I'm sure he'll get over it. So we also passed the transit reform resolution. really calling on the state to do everything necessary to make sure they're funding it. As we know, we have a CTA fiscal cliff of $771 million. And so that leads to needing revenue from the state, but also getting some of the governance. Hey man, you gotta cross one of those off your list. Anyway, kidding. The other things that we're looking at are exploring and advocating for bus rapid transit, or having like a line just for the bus lanes, and then go, well, where are we gonna drive? In the other lanes, everyone, it's gonna be okay. Actually, this is a good little tidbit for trivia. So now you've got like these bus pads now, where like the buses just keep going, they stop, they pick people up, and everyone goes, this is slowing us down, why don't they pull over so we can keep going? That logic is inaccurate and incorrect, my friends. Because if they pull over, then they gotta pull back out, and it's slowing everybody up. So by actually going straight through, stopping, putting people on and keep going, it actually saves you time. It might feel a little bit different because you're not used to it, but it's actually more efficient. And so I just wanted to add that little tidbit in case your friends tell you they hate the bus pass. Great.
Woo, bus!
Go buses! Buses are great, actually. Trains too. Alright. Environmental justice. Alright, so we also, oh yeah, our ash tree people. Any ash tree people in the house? Much respect. So we worked, I think in 2020 also, and actually we're able to secure, as part of our budget vote, $1 million to be able to address the ash trees and inoculate them. Obviously it was 1 year. And so we were able to get that done. It's still going to take a lot more work. We also worked on CIPP, cured in place piping. So my first 2 months in being an elected official, I got to watch the whole block of 5900 block of Hermitage get all its trees cut. It was like Fern Gully or something. But it was, all the trees were cut. The neighbors were losing their minds. And it was all because they were trying to do sewer work and felt that you had to remove it in order to actually fix the sewers. Because we pushed for a pilot, what they do now in certain instances, mostly in sewer, is they do lining to maintain the sewer actually longer, rather than having to tear down trees to fix it.
So instead of removing the pipe, we lined it, and it works better.
Correct, it's like an epoxy that then keeps it stable for longer. And so whenever they can, in the instances they can, they start doing that. That's because we forced them to do it within my first year in office. So yeah, not just potholes and fixing stop signs, people. We do stuff. All right, so next we're working on sustainable parkways. So using pollinators and native species on your parkways that absorb water way better. Obviously, folks know it keeps raining. We get these storms. We want to make sure we're addressing it so it's not just backing up into your basements. So looking to see if it's more cost effective in the long run to have native species as opposed to the regular grass you see now, which doesn't absorb much. And also looking at congestion pricing. Do you guys know what congestion pricing is? I have a lot of urbanists in the house. It's not all of y'all though. But congestion pricing in New York, the way they've done it is if you're going into like Manhattan, you're paying a little more for the use of the road because you're making it more congested. In order to balance it out, you're paying that fee. It allows for people to think of other ways to commute and makes it faster for the people who actually need to use those roads to get to work, for example. The city version, in my belief, would not operate that way. If you were to only have downtown area be the one that's included as a zone, then all the people working downtown are paying more, and they all live in the city, and that's something that's fundamentally fair. I would look at it as using the tollways when you get into the city, so we make these suburb people pay for it. Like that, it works? Okay. I know, but wouldn't that go? Whatever. So next. Alright. You guys didn't know I was doing comedy, did you? Alright, so, protecting our rights. A lot of this work has definitely come from, by virtue of me being the chair of the Committee on Immigrant and Refugee Rights. The fact that I was nominated and voted by our council to serve during that time was something we took extremely seriously. So when we think about the fact that we had, I think it was like 45, 55,000 people bussed in from different states to the city of Chicago, and the city had no real plan on how to address it. One, we had to make sure we were informing neighbors, but we also had to hold government accountable. So, for example, when someone thought it was a good idea for a group named Garter World, a paramilitary group that used to cage people, to be the people managing our encampment system, I think I was the only city council member to call that out for a while, because that was my job as a chair, and I remember telling people, I'm not wearing that. Or, for example, when someone, fifth floor, also wanted to set up encampments on toxic land at 38th and Cali. Similarly, probably the only one to speak out for a while, right? When they were looking to evict people after 60 days because they were looking to clear the shelters, also had to call them out. So again, some of y'all may think sometimes that I'm a little confrontational. I call balls and strikes. I don't care who it is. Same thing that happened under Lightfoot, same thing will happen under Johnson. Same for whoever's next. They serve you all. And I'm in Chicago, so no way.
Try, baby.
That's right. 100%. All right, so the other things that occurred, June 4th of this year, ICE showed up at an office after undocumented folks who were abiding by the law got a text message to show up. They show up there and it's a bunch of guys with masks and guns who then start kidnapping them. CPD showed up, even though we have a welcoming city ordinance. And so I'll say this, whether or not the officers were doing what they thought was right and the best of their abilities, it's never happened before. And in order for us to know what right looks like, you've got to investigate what has occurred to figure out what's gone well, what needs to be improved, and what judgment calls may not have worked. So we had to force an order to get that information from the mayor's office and from the city to be able to start looking at it. We got some of it. They sent us basically an outline of information and some recordings, but we have not, recordings I mean audio. And in one of those recordings, you hear somebody from the Office of Emergency Management and Communications say, hey, we know it's ICE, but let's not say ICE because we don't want the media to know. Not exactly accountable or transparent. So that was an audio. What we have not received is body-worn camera because officers were going into the office, talking to people and continued on. So we've still been told that we're gonna get it, but it'll be redacted. So we have not received that yet. Conversely, the Department of Homeland Security FOIAs the city asking for information, and what do they get? They get arrest records with people's faces, names, country of origin. So whenever you say you're a welcoming city, but you're not doing the welcoming city stuff, there's a problem. We're gonna hold them accountable for that as well. So yeah, we also did a resolution to ban masking for ICE agents. Okay, Hoosier from our team, we're kind of similar, but we're like, it's a resolution. Didn't really do a thing, but it speaks to value. We'd love to actually pass something by. We know it's a challenge for the state to even do it, but even articulating our values, I think, makes sense to the city. So, next slide. I mentioned the FOIA part, so that one's already there. We're trying to make sure that we actually get that stronger. Because, for example, if we want body-worn camera and they're saying we can't send it to you because we need to redact it, then why can't you say the same thing to the Department of Homeland Security when they're asking for the information? Consistency is key here, people. So, we're working on that. We also passed the bodily autonomy ordinance for folks coming into the city, that they get the same protections as the welcoming city provides for undocumented folks. If you're coming from, God forbid, a red state where they don't recognize your own body autonomy, you come to Chicago, we're gonna hold you down. Oh yeah, we also approved the gender self-identification of city government. So your business cards didn't have pronouns. You couldn't pick the name that you used. You couldn't get those changes happening. So we moved to get that change to the city so it can model as a best employer and if other people do the same. And so we were continuing to work to find other ways to make sure that people can live their authentic lives and be who they are. Next. Thanks. Yo, shout out to Murph. So, okay. Our website, you can actually look up this legislation and it just got redone. It looks really cool. It's really intuitive. It's really great for the end user. These are all website terms I'm confusing. Okay, so 40thward.org/legislation. You can find out about all the work that we're doing and have done, and also send us information, ideas of what else to work on. Next. Opportunities to get involved. 40thward.org volunteer/volunteer. You go there and you have different opportunities, whether it's volunteering with the Committee on Immigrant and Refugee Rights, whether it's supporting our district counselors at the CCPSA, whether it's being part of our environmental board or our Safe Street boards, or PB, our participatory budgeting committee. These are all opportunities for neighbors that can help. We have Santos, who's our director of community engagement, right over here. He's like the younger, way cooler than me. So he's there. I'm the old guy now. So, that's kidding. But yeah, you can go check out opportunities to volunteer. We can always use the help. As well as Diana Perez over here on the committee side. Our one person everything. So whenever you know your rights workshops all across the city with different ward offices or canvassing business districts to talk to some of the folks who are selling candies and trying to identify if they're okay or need support systems. Literally, Deanna does it all, so thank you for that. There's a whole team, but we know how much you do, so we'll shut you out. Next, what do you want to see from your city government? This is the breakout portion, I assume, Murph?
Yes, I'll come.
All right, I'll let you. This is Allison Murphy. Yes, Director of Policy Council.
Thank you so much for coming to this little experiment of ours to see more civic engagement in the kind of legislation and policy we're doing. To that end, we're doing something kind of new, and we would love to have breakout groups so we can hear directly from you about some of the ideas you have for things you want to see in all of these areas. So what we're going to have everybody do is go to a particular part of the room depending on what you want to discuss. So if you want to discuss city budget, accountable city government, I'm going to have you go to the right of to the left of the
Well, your left, their right.
My left, their right. Yeah, I was right. I know I was right. If you want to discuss anything involved in reimagining public safety, I'm going to have you go back to the area that is closest to the bar where all those long tables are.
That's right, get your drink out,
Yeah.
that's right.
Sometimes we need a drink to discuss public safety. If you want to discuss anything regarding creating more livable cities, so affordable housing, environmental justice, public transit, any of that, you're going to be in this horseshoe-shaped area right here with the bench. And then if you would like to discuss any kind of protections of people's rights, particularly immigrant rights, because we have some folks from the committee here today, you're going to go in that front room there and discuss. If you don't want to talk about any of those things, that's fine. I would say go to the bar in the front room and have yourself a drink and talk amongst yourselves. We are going to do that for about 15-20 minutes, and then we're going to have folks taking notes so that we can then take that information and digest it and see what we can do with that. And then we're going to have an open Q&A section where, like, if you want to ask questions directly of the alderman, you can. So depending on where you want to go, again, accountable city budget and government right here, livable city in this horseshoe area, public safety towards the back, and protecting rights up in the front room at the benches out there. Okay, right.
Also, shout out to Whiskey Girl Tavern and Christina and everybody, please. Buy stuff, support your local business, tip your bartenders, thank you so much. So we'll give you how long until? Is there a buzzer?